Hello and welcome back to Storytime with Waterford Libraries. Tonight we're reading Mad Grandad's Wicked Pictures, and it's written and illustrated by Oisin McGann. There's a lot of chapters in this book, so get comfortable. Chapter 1. Patterns in the Paint. It was the middle of the holidays and I was going to Grandad's house to help him paint his living room. When I got there, the room was already cleared out and there was sheets over the furniture. There was a bunch of old tins and tubes of paint sitting on the floor. "Where'd you get those, Grandad?" I said. "They've been in the shed for ages, Lenny," Grandad said. "I bought some of the paint in the 1960s, a very long time ago." The 1960s was years ago and Grandad still talked about that time a lot. I think it's because he wasn't bald back then, and there's Grandad with his cool 1960s hair and glasses. Grandad was a bit mad. He sometimes put orange juice in his tea or danced when he was listening to the news on the radio. What is he like? He's a very happy man. "Does paint that old still work?" I asked Grandad. "Only one way to find out," Grandad said. He opened up one of the tins. The paint was a pale yellow. Dipping a brush in it, he reached up and painted a piece of the wall. That was when things went weird. The paint was striped. The stripes were red and yellow. "Holy smoke," said Grandad. He brushed on more of the striped paint and we looked at it in amazement. He tried another tin. This paint was green with yellow polka dots. He just brushed it on the wall and the polka dots appeared. "That's wild. Let's see what else they've got," I said. Chapter 2. We opened more tins and started painting. I did a separate patch of wall. All of the tins of paint had weird patterns in them. A few minutes later, we stood back to look at our work. "That's mad," I said. "Look at them painting. What do you think?" There's Lenny in the corner. "Whoa. What is that? I have dreams about things like this," Grandad said. "They're almost like creatures, don't they?" Grandad's creature was much bigger than mine, but mine had sharper teeth. Here's Lenny's. "How did you make that?" "This is cool," I said. "I pity we have to paint over them." "Who says we have to?" Grandad replied. "Great! I'm going to call mine one Fang," I said. "I think I'll call my one Mildred," Grandad said, nodding to himself. He disappeared out the door and came back a minute later with a picture frame. "I've had this lying about for ages," he said. He hammered a picture hook in over my painting and hung the frame on it. It made it look really cool, like a painting. "Now we just have to get a frame for mine and they'll both look like proper paintings," he said. That sounded like a great idea. Grandad took some measurements for his picture and then we headed into town to buy a frame. Chapter 3. When we came back from the framing shop, I hurried into the living room. I skidded to stop and stared at the wall. "Grandad, my picture's gone." "Holy smoke," he gasped as he came in. "How did that happen?" There was nothing but a blank space on the wall where Fang had been. Fang was his creature that he painted. Even the frame was gone. We both went over and touched the wall just to be sure. "Look," Grandad said, pointing at the floor. There were little drops of paint on the floor, leading out the door. "Somebody stole it," Grandad growled. "But it was painted on a wall," I said. "How can you steal paint from an actual wall?" We followed the trail of paint drops out into the hall. We followed it up the stairs. Then we followed it into Grandad's spare room. As we walked in, a movement above us made us look up. The picture frame suddenly dropped from the ceiling and fell on us. It landed on the floor with a thump. I went to step out of it, but found I could only slide along the floor instead. I was completely flat and stuck to the floor. What has happened? Grandad, what's going on? Grandad was stuck too. It's like we've been turned into paintings, Lenny, Grandad told me. But I can still move. Me too, I said, and they tried to run out of the bedroom, but they're flat as paintings. We heard a nasty laugh from right above us. Sitting on top of the door was my painting, Fang. He was real and round, and he looked like a crazy little goblin. Oh gosh, with his big sharp teeth. He jumped down, picked up the picture frame, and ran down the stairs. Chapter 4. After him, Grandad shouted. If we use that frame to make us like this, then maybe we can use it to get back to normal. But that was going to be harder than it sounded. We could run across the floor, or the walls, or along the ceiling. We could even go around corners, but we were still completely flat. The stairs are a bit of a struggle there, I think, trying to slide down the stairs when you're flat. We rushed along the walls, down over the stairs. Then we crept over the whole ceiling towards the living room. Fang was inside, whispering something to Grandad's painting, Mildred. Mildred was a mad mix of spiky legs, loads of eyes, and a striped body. She was moving now too. My gosh, what is she? She's a wild creature. Look at all those legs. But she must have been too big to fit through the frame because she was still flat on the wall. She sniggered to herself when Fang made some joke, and then she saw us. With a roar, she came charging after us. Run, Lenny! Grandad yelped. When Mildred opened her mouth, she was all eyes and teeth and claws. We knew right then that she would eat us if she caught us. My gosh, look at them chasing along the wall, all flat as pancakes. So we ran. We dodged round plug sockets, down walls, up corners, around the light switches, and through the crack of the closed door into the kitchen. Mildred chased us across the kitchen cupboards and over the kitchen counter. We slipped and we skidded around the sink, over the draining board, and down to the floor again. Lots of surfaces in the kitchen to slide over if you're flat like a painting. The tiles were slippery too. It was like trying to crawl over ice. Mildred couldn't keep her grip, and she kept flying past us as we were trying to avoid her. We scooted up the wall and across the window. We were so thin, the light from outside shone through us like an X-ray. Whoa. Fang appeared out of nowhere. He jumped onto the counter and grabbed the kettle. Look out, Lenny, Grandad shouted. That water could wipe us out. If they're paintings, they're probably made of paint. Fang threw the water up onto the window and it splashed above us. Some of it got on my trousers and nearly washed away my bum. Grandad lost a bit more hair when the water swept past his head, but he is mostly bald anyway. Mildred ducked under the dripping water, still chasing us. Suddenly, Grandad had an idea. He turned and spat at the monster. She skidded to a stop as the spit hit her. But it wasn't water. It was just paint, like the rest of us. That only made her madder. She charged after Grandad and then realised that she'd stopped for too long. The drips of water came down around her like bars, cutting her off. That won't hold her for long, Grandad said. My gosh, it is. It's like a prison. Chapter 5. Fang wiped the glass dry with some kitchen roll before Mildred could be washed away. Then he threw more water at us as we raced across the floor tiles. The water blocked the kitchen door, so we had to turn and run another way. Fang giggled. Mildred came after us again. There was a wet mop in the corner and we ducked behind it. Mildred was running so fast she nearly ran into it. She turned at the last second, but her feet rubbed against the mop. Howling, she dragged smears of wet paint all across the floor. The water has destroyed her. We made it to the cellar door and we slipped underneath the door. There's no way out of here, Lenny, Grandad said. If we don't find a way to stop her, we're going to get gobbled up. The cellar was full of all sorts of stuff. It was dark too, and when Mildred came under the door after us, she couldn't see where we were. There was a big circus poster on the wall, so we hid underneath it. Can you see what they've done? There's a face on the circus poster, so Grandad and Lenny are pretending they're part of the poster to throw Mildred off. Lenny, look, Grandad muttered, pointing at something. There, behind some boxes, was another picture frame. Maybe we can use that, he said. But Mildred must have heard him. She suddenly turned and came racing towards us with all her eyes and her teeth and her sharp legs. Grandad pushed me towards the picture frame. Then he slid out from behind the poster, waving his arms and shouting. Mildred snarled, charging at him with her mouth wide open. Chapter 6. I darted down to the picture frame. As soon as I ducked behind it, I could feel something pull me from the wall, and I fell out of the frame. I wasn't back to normal. I wasn't flat anymore, just by going through the picture frame. Pushing the boxes out of the way, I jumped up and looked over at Grandad. Mildred came flying at him. He scampered back under the poster and out the other side. Mildred now was only inches behind him, flying through the poster. I didn't know what else to do, so I slapped my hands flat against the poster. Mildred stopped suddenly. She was stuck to the poster. I rubbed my hand over the rest of it, and I could feel her sticking to the back of the poster. Well done, Lenny. Put it off the wall, Lenny, Grandad said. I grabbed the poster and tore it from the wall. Mildred came with it, caught on the back of the sheet of paper. Grandad hurried down to the picture frame and hopped through, landing on top of boxes with a crash, and he's back to normal too. I think his bum is stuck in the picture frame. Right, he said as he looked at Mildred on the back of the poster. I wonder if the other one sticks to paper too. Mildred gave a whimper and thrashed around a bit, but she was totally trapped. Fang was in the living room, trying to get the tops off the tins of paint. He wanted to create more paint creatures, but the lids were so old they were jammed up with paint and hard to open. He was about to prise one open with a screwdriver when I leaned around the doorway and shouted at him. Hey, come and get me, you horrible little paint thing. Fang looked at me in surprise. Then he hissed and bared his teeth. His claws scratched over the floor as he came running after me. He's still a bit frightening, and he's 3D. But Grandad was ready for him. Fang ran into the hall and right into some wallpaper that Grandad was unrolling across the floor. The paint creature's feet stuck to the paper, and he skidded into the wall with the paper curling up all around him. As Fang tried to get free, Grandad charged up and dropped the picture frame over the creature. Then he quickly picked it up again. Fang found himself trapped as a painting once more, but this time he was painted onto wallpaper. We thought he deserved it. We rolled up the big poster and the piece of wallpaper and put them in the recycling bin. With a bit of luck, they'll end up being made into toilet roll or something else useful like that. What a mad story. And did Lenny and Grandad get the sitting room painted? I don't know. Thank you very much for listening. That was called Mad Grandad's Wicked Pictures by Oisin McGann.